Hey guys, how are you? This is Jim Prusak, physical therapist from the Pain PT. And today we're going to talk about anxiety and chronic pain or chronic symptoms in the body. So the topic today is going to be about anxiety and chronic pain or chronic symptoms in the body. And I think you guys are going to be surprised to see how common an anxiety disorder or even low to moderate levels of anxiety is associated with chronic pain or chronic symptoms in the body. In my opinion, when I work with people, it's probably the number one thing I see in people that's contributing to or causing their symptoms. So let me give you a couple statistics that are out there from the research and the science here. I've wrote down a couple of things I found, and you might be surprised to hear some of these stats. So what we know is close to 50% of people with chronic pain have an anxiety disorder. And anxiety disorders, at least in the United States, and it's probably worldwide, is the number one mental health condition. Okay, so it's very, very common. It's the biggest thing we see. And like I said, it's very highly linked with chronic pain and other conditions. So there was a study done here in the U.S. It was over a period of 3 years. They polled people, 161,000 people, and with chronic pain and arthritis. And they found out that people with arthritis and chronic pain were more likely to screen positive for a mental health condition than healthy controls. And it was 79% of the people with chronic pain and arthritis screened positive for a mental health condition. So as you're seeing with the data, there's very, very strong links between our brain and pain, our brain and chronic symptoms in the body. Okay, we know that people with anxiety disorders are 3 to 5 times more likely to go to the doctor. Okay, so what that tells us is that anxiety is creating physical symptoms in the body, and they go to the doctor, and it's not being diagnosed. This is part of the problem, is that we go to the physician and we're looking at a physical problem, and they're looking at it physically, and they're not realizing the cause is anxiety. Like I said, the biggest thing I see in people from my observation is that anxiety is number one cause of symptoms in the body. We'll talk in other videos about depression and PTSD being two of the other biggest causes of chronic pain and chronic health symptoms in the body. Okay, so it's very, very common. What we find here is that anxiety disorders and mood disorders are 2 to 7 times more prevalent in people with chronic pain and migraines. So people who have anxiety disorders and mood disorders, they're 2 to 7 times more prevalent in chronic pain and migraine sufferers. Okay, so again, more data showing the connection. And basically that's, what I want to talk about in terms of the data. Now I want to go over this concept of anxiety here today because it is so prevalent. It's something I see so commonly and often in people I work with, is that we need to talk about what is anxiety and how can we look at it and how can we work with it in a different way. Now, I can speak very personal about anxiety because that's something I went through. I've had anxiety most of my life, and it's something I've overcome now, but it took a while for me to figure out what this was and then how to work with it. So with anxiety, as you guys know, it's a version of fear, right? That's the category of emotion, is fear. But the difference between anxiety and real fear is that anxiety is based on a perceived danger or a perceived threat. Okay, and this can be anything that at any time in your life where you're doing something, being with a certain person, out somewhere, thinking about something, watching something on TV, having a symptom in your body. It could be anything that triggers off this sort of anxiety reaction. Okay, and so you'll feel a level of fear. Okay, now if you're feeling pure anxiety, emotional anxiety, you're going to feel it as a level of fear, that shaky, nervy kind of energy in your body. Okay, that's classic anxiety. Now, first thing we got to do to decide is there any danger? Okay, so again, this is coming from your amygdala anxiety, coming from the limbic brain, and we need to tap into the cortex. We always talk about the prefrontal cortex and decide and say, hey, let me look around here. Is there any real danger? Okay, we need to have the cortex to come into play, because if it doesn't, the amygdala is going to be perceiving danger and threat when there is nothing going on. And if we listen to that, then we're going to be stuck. Okay, it's like having real fear, but there is no real fear. So we're acting as if there's a real fear or real danger, and there isn't. So we got to check ourselves, okay? Because anxiety is just energy in your body. It's just emotion. Now, as we know, all emotions are okay and normal. All emotions are normal. We need to learn how to work with each of these emotions. So anxiety is different from anger. It's different from sadness. We want to be able to work with all three of the categories of emotions in a good way. Something I work with people on. So with anxiety, when we work with anxiety, one of the principles with this is that we do not want to listen to anxiety. We do not want to listen to it because, again, it's a false alarm. It's false danger. It's the idea that your brain, your amygdala is believing there's a fire going on in your home, or a fire going on in your body is a better way to put it, when there's nothing going on. It's just a false alarm. Okay, there's not a real fire. It feels like a real fire because the symptoms are real in your body, but there is no physical danger. There's no danger to your body. Okay, so we have to really get to understand this concept first, and then we need to apply the understanding into a practice. Okay, this is more important that you practice what you understand, or take theory to practice. And this is the idea that whatever you're anxious about, we need to face. Whatever you're anxious about, we need to face directly. We got to face it head on, okay? Because that's the only way we're going to overcome it. Anxiety, just like fear, is going to enact the flight reaction part of your nervous system, want to make you avoid, okay? And that's called fear avoidance. Make you flee, pull back, not engage, okay? And when we have anxiety, we don't want to do that, okay? We can't do that. We won't get better. So one of the things with anxiety, and I learned this in myself, was that I would have social anxiety and some generalized anxiety and a little bit of health anxiety too, because I went through chronic pain as well, various times in my life. So I'm very familiar with this stuff. And you have to learn that anxiety, I had to learn myself that I didn't need to listen to it. I can just let this energy pass. It goes from my brain, it gets injected into my body. Just imagine a syringe just injecting you, and all of a sudden you get this anxiety in your body. And then you need to know what to do with it. So instead of listening to it and saying, oh, I better get out of here, I better avoid, I'm uncomfortable, I better go home, I better avoid situations, I better avoid the pain, I better avoid activities, we need to confront that. It's just chemicals. It's just chemicals. And again, the chemicals are trying to indicate a danger to you guys or a threat when there isn't. So that's why the cortex needs to come in and say, there's no danger, there's no threat, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong here. And then we have to let that danger signal that was injected into the body in the form of pure anxiety or physical anxiety, which we're going to talk about next, go. We don't need to worry about it. Okay, so what can happen is that we can get what's called physical anxiety, or it's called unconscious anxiety in the psychological world, where we're not feeling pure anxiety anymore. We don't feel anxious in the classic sense. But what we're now feeling is a symptom in the body, a somatic symptom, pain, anything, a stomach issue, a headache, a back pain, a knee pain. I mean, the symptoms are endless. There's hundreds of symptoms. You can go to the Anxiety Center, centre.com, anxietycenter.com, and they have a list of somatic symptoms from anxiety, and it's very comprehensive. So, same premise here. What you're feeling in your body is anxiety. Okay, once we can classify that, and when I work with people, I make that diagnosis that I think your symptom is just anxiety. It's not structural, it's not physical, but it's coming from your brain. Then we are able to face it. Okay, this is why we can confront the pain and start doing things again, is because there is no danger in your body. It feels dangerous. The symptoms are exactly the same, or even worse than the physical version of it. Okay, meaning it's real pain. It's in your body. It's in the same areas and locations if you had an injury, but the source is from the brain. sources from your anxiety. So again, if you listen to the pain now, you listen to the symptom that's coming from your anxiety, the anxiety now is serving the purpose, okay, to keep you from doing something. It's trying to stop you. The limbic brain is perceiving danger or threat, and it wants you to stop and avoid doing things in your life or to move forward. It wants you to focus on the threat, which could be the pain now, could be the symptom. And that's why people's brains go right to the symptom in hypervigilance and focus on it, because that serves the anxiety. Okay, it serves you to be looking out for danger, threat in your body. Now, understanding this is the first step, like I said, and practicing it is the second step, where we need to learn to challenge and confront and face. These are all great words. Challenge, confront, face the anxiety symptom, okay, and move forward with our life. Understanding that if you're diagnosed with anxiety-driven pain, we have nothing to fear. There's nothing wrong with you, which is great. There's nothing wrong with you except the brain centers are overactivating. Now, anxiety can come from many things. It can come from having traumatic events in your life, PTSD. It can come from adverse childhood events. It can come from a lot of stress. It can come from other health conditions you had in the past, and now you've developed a health anxiety, fear around your health and around the symptom. So you can have many reasons why, but at the end of the day, guys, the anxiety is the same in everybody. It's a false fear. It's a irrational fear that is driven by the brain, the amygdala, and the limbic brain that is not realizing there's not a real fire going on. Okay? Remember, that part of your brain, the limbic reptilian brain, is going to overshoot on the side of caution. And depending on what's happened to it, if you've been traumatized, PTSD, high levels of stress, previous health conditions, parents who were anxious, so you've learned basically anxiety at some point in your life, and now it's a part of you, that limbic brain is not going to self-correct. That's what the studies show. It's not going to self-correct with anxiety. We have to teach it through the prefrontal cortex to correct, basically, to say, hey, there's no danger. You're fine. You are fine. And we need to teach that brain over and over again until it eventually learns that it doesn't need to be producing the anxiety anymore, because there's no real fire in the body. There's no real fire. Okay, so this is the premise of the treatment that we're trying to apply when we do this. And we really have to be diligent about this, because it comes on and we don't like that feeling in our body, whether it's pure anxiety or it's obviously physical anxiety through a symptom. But we have to be able to decipher through the prefrontal cortex what's going on. Without that, you're going to be controlled by your amygdala. It's called amygdala hijack. Talked about that before. Studies show, Stanford study 2020 was the first brain study of its kind, I mentioned this before, to show that when a person's in anxiety, now they were measuring classic anxiety, but you can imagine physical anxiety with symptoms, same thing. The amygdala is sending one-way signals to your cortex, and they were not able to pick up any signals coming back from the cortex to the amygdala. Now that's really the part of healing we're talking about. The cortex is supposed to regulate the amygdala in a way to dampen it down, to quiet it down, to calm it down. It loses its ability, and we end up with amygdala hijack. It's being hijacked. So our job is to start getting the signal going back to the amygdala to say, hey, look, there's nothing here. There's not a fire. Just, you're going to dump this stuff in my body, either pain or anxiety, but I'm not going to listen to it because it's not true. It's not real. It feels very real. It is real in the sense of the chemicals, but there is no danger in my body. It's from my brain. So I need to not listen to it, essentially. So that's the premise here, guys, is that we need to overcome anxiety to heal at the core of it, whether you're anxious about whatever it is. So this is called facing your fears. But again, it's not a real fear. You're facing your anxiety. And I'm always telling people anxiety is not fear. It's different. Anxiety is not real fear. So again, we do not need to listen to it in the sense that your house is on fire and you better run out the door right now. So we have to challenge everything you're anxious about in your life. We should tick them off. Boom, 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 boom. And this is what I help people do. And it's hard work. You know, I really push people, look, you can do this. Let's go. And people are like, oh, I don't know. I can't. I'm going to have a lot of pain. I go, your pain's fine. There's nothing wrong with the pain. It's just anxiety. So once we make that distinction that your pain is a version of anxiety, which is what I do with people, then we can move forward to regain our life. We don't need to be a victim to this, because the anxiety is going to weaken you and it's going to push you down. Okay, we'll talk more about that in another video, but it's going to push you down. It's going to disempower you, because when you're in a state of anxiety and fear-like state, you're going to feel weak and you need to withdraw from things. You need to pull back. You're not going to stand up for yourself. You're not going to move forward. You're going to feel like you're, again, this victim that's been disempowered, and you're going to go down to low-level emotions potentially. And that's going to lead to depression for some people. It's going to lead to apathy and despair. We don't want that. So guys, this anxiety is a big problem. And it's very closely associated with physical symptoms in your body as a cause of them. It can also result on the back end from the condition. And then that also feeds your symptoms on the back end. So you develop a symptom, and then because you've had it for a while, you get anxious, and now that feeds the symptom. So at the core of it, it's still anxiety, whether it's on the front end or the back end or both. The problem is anxiety at this point, because the body heals. The body will always heal, but if you're anxious at any level, the pain will continue. Okay, the pain will persist. Or, like I said, anxiety will cause the pain in the first place. So either way, we're dealing with anxiety. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Reach out with questions, comments here. If you need help on your journey, you're getting stuck, fill out a consultation request form. Have been quite busy. I do have a wait list, but it can be moved pretty quickly to get you in and get that diagnosis. And then from that point on, we can start to move forward. We can just say, what is this? What's going on? And then we can have a plan of action to get you back to where you want to be. All right, guys, take care. Hope you're having a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.